While making a lot of money may seem like the answer to your problems, if you're not managing it well, you won't have anything to show for it. Just ask my friend and client, Rachel. When Rachel and I first started working together in January of 2021, she was making well over six figures, but didn't have a clue about where it was going. Fast forward 3 years later, and Rachel is making more than ever, saving and investing more than ever, and doing it all with a solid budget plan. In this episode, Rachel and I are discussing how growing and budgeting your income, whether you're making six figures or not, can completely transform your life and finances. Hey there, I'm Raya Reeves, and over a decade ago, I turned my life around through budgeting. I went from being an overspender deep in credit card debt to being the founder and full-time money coach of City Girl Savings. Now, I help women work towards their dream life and tap into their financial power one budget at a time. I fully believe you can live a life you love with a budget, and I'm living proof. The weekly City Girl Savings podcast focuses on the intersection of money and the City Girl lifestyle. Join me every week along with some special guests as I share my experiences, advice, and guidance on navigating life and money as an experience-loving millennial. So, do you remember that major financial institution I worked for before I went full-time with City Girl Savings? Well, that's where Rachel and I met. Since I've known her, Rachel has always been in leadership roles and recognized for her achievements. And if I'm being honest, I was a little intimidated by her, but that's because I respected her. When the opportunity came up for her to become my mentor, I literally jumped at the opportunity. Through our mentoring sessions, we formed a friendship. And when I built up the courage to share with her what I was doing with City Girl Savings, she was nothing but supportive and even vowed to become a client. Rachel is married, a mom of one with two fur babies, and because of her career growth and her not being afraid to take her talents to multiple places, her household income is multiple six figures. Hi, Rachel. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I know I gave an overview of how we met and how you ultimately became a client, but can you share your background with listeners? Like, where are you from? What was money like growing up for you? How did you get into the banking and financial industry that you're in now?
Yes. Hello. And thank you for the kind words. I will strive to live up to them. I appreciate and admire you so much. So your words mean a lot to me. So I grew up in a suburb of Los Angeles. Those familiar with the area will recognize the San Fernando Valley. I know you are well aware.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. We went to the same college, Cal State Northridge. I grew up with a single parent. So we grew up with my dad. I think with a lot of single parents now and then, money was tight. There were three of us. And we didn't talk about money a whole lot. We didn't talk about, hey, this is where you might want to go to college or anything like that. And we didn't have the internet then like we do now. I'm really aging myself here. So I got kind of, I would say, like a slow start compared to others. I was a major that had nothing to do with finance. So I was an English literature major. No thought about banking, finances, nothing at all. But I always worked full time while I went to school. So I had gotten a job at a financial institution. I ended up getting a lot of promotions there. So originally my plan was, okay, well, I'll graduate and then I will teach. But by the time that was going to happen, it was going to be a pretty big pay cut I would have had to have taken, plus more school. And I didn't want it bad enough, right? I didn't want to teach bad enough to take those steps. So I stayed at the financial institution and I got super, super lucky with a very good boss who gave me a lot of opportunities. And then when she made the move to the major financial institution where we met, took me with her. And from there, I really just started getting different opportunities and taking advantage of them. And many years later, I am still in the same industry, different bank, but still kind of doing the same thing.
Well, we're definitely going to talk about your career growth over the years because it's super inspiring. But one thing that you said that stuck out to me was you and your family of three, college wasn't talked about, money wasn't talked about. Where did the spark in you come to actually apply and go to college? What was that in you that said, this is what I should probably do?
Well, luckily, I have an older sister, so I saw what she did. And I had friends, right, that went to college that had much different financial situations than I did. So I kind of saw what was going on. It was a little rough for me because I had always done well in school, but I really didn't know what was available to me. If I had known that you can get grants and you can get scholarships and you can apply for this and that and the next thing, I probably would have gotten them, but I had no idea. So I just ended up going to community college for a little bit. And then I applied to Cal State Northridge and got in, but really still, I was kind of on my own. So it still took me a while. I changed my major a bunch of times and I wasn't this very focused, dedicated student. I was going to school, I was working, and I was a little lost for a while. So I just sort of like fumbled my way through figuring that out, is the way I would probably describe it.
Well, that should give people hope because where that fumbling led to is a pretty amazing place. So before you started working with me as a City Girl Savings client, what was your money situation like? What were you making? Did you have a budget? Did you have debt? And maybe we can talk about when you graduated college and you decided not to take the pay cut and kind of stay where you were. How was money like for you then? Because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, from that time to when we actually started working together was quite a while. So, how did things shift with your money over the course of that time as well?
When I first graduated and I was still working at the original financial institution I was at, I would not say I was making great money. To me at the time and growing up how I did, I was like, oh my goodness, this is not 4.25 an hour, folks. This is like a salary. So, at the time I thought it was a lot. I think my original starting salary there was like 30. And then by the time I had worked there 12 years, I believe I was making like 65 or something.
Okay.
And that was after many promotions.
Wow.
So I was probably a bit underpaid there. And then when I went and followed my boss to the next financial institution, I made a pretty big leap and I was making not six figures yet, but much more than 60. So that was where I think I started on a path of sort of getting to where I am now, where it was good money, right? Like even at the time, if you were to say I'm making 80, 90, something like that in the 2000s, you would have said that was pretty good money. So at the time, it was not bad. My money situation before we started was it was not good, but it was not dire. I was able to buy a house. We had cars. We were paycheck to paycheck, but not in an awful way. So that was okay, right? I wasn't drowning in debt the way that I think probably some people are because I was making good money at that point. When we started, I was making, I think, like 160, maybe a little more. And that was pretty good money. But again, I didn't have any left. So I was able to buy a house. That was great. And I was able to do those things for myself. But other than that, I mean, I was a hot mess. I never had a budget in my life. Could not have told you the first thing about a budget, was scared to death of having a budget. The majority of the debt I had was credit card debt, myself and my husband. And even though I knew that a lot of our money was going to credit card debt, I really did not have an idea of exactly how much and how much to each card and where that really was. It was just in general, oh God, I owe so much to credit cards. I mean, we talked about this at the time. I did not even want to open my bank app. I
Yeah.
did not want to know. I did not want to see that after paying my bills, my balance was $3. And even then, even when I was making pretty good money, I paid all my bills on time, but there were still times where I was overdrafted
Mm.
because I wasn't looking. I wasn't, I was like, oh, I have enough. Let's go do whatever. And then I would be overdrafted, not by thousands of dollars or anything, but it would be 50, 60, $100 or something. And that's because I just wasn't looking at
Yeah.
all. So mentally, emotionally, and in general, I would say I was a hot mess. But I know that there are upsides to where I was, and I wasn't as bad off as I know that some people probably are.
Now I'm curious, was that kind of the trend for you even before you got married? I think when you got out into the working world after college, was that always the case? Like, did you ever have a budget? Did you always kind of avoid looking? Was that just the theme up until we started working together?
It was definitely the theme. And I had made some progress by that point in terms of bill paying. So there was a time in my life where everything was late. I wouldn't open bills if I knew I didn't have the money to pay it. I didn't open it. So I think at one point my credit score was like not even 500. I was so late on paying bills. And honestly, I worked for a Fortune 500 financial institution. I had a license to work in that financial industry, and I still like didn't really know what my credit score would or wouldn't do for me. So I made progress there. I put all my bills on bill pay. I wasn't having late bills anymore, but I was still in this place where I also didn't have any money. In general, the anxiety and dread of before there were bank apps. Again, I'm really dating myself over here. Before there were bank apps, I didn't want to open a statement. I didn't want to open a bill. I threw them in the trash. Didn't want to know, didn't want to see, couldn't bring myself to do it. And then I got a bank app, but I still felt the same dread. It was still the same. Even if I was putting my finger on the app to open it, it would be this anxiety and dread like rising up in me to the point where like sometimes I just like, forget it, forget it, forget it.
Mm.
So yeah, definitely that was my trend. And I never tried budgeting. I just always thought I'm awful at this.
Mhm.
So I sort of accepted that I was awful at it. And I never even tried.
I remember our like very early conversations, like before we started working together, like during those mentoring sessions. I remember you saying, like, no, this is going to kind of be it. Or like, I wish I could get it together. And I was like, Rachel, I know you can. I'm like, I know you can. And you did. It just, first off, like you have to have like a mental shift. And we'll talk about this, but you definitely did turn things around. And like I was saying in those early sessions, those mentoring sessions when we were talking about maybe you potentially becoming a client, I remember you saying like maybe you couldn't afford it or you didn't think you could afford it just because of how things were with your money. Obviously, I knew you could just based on our conversations and what I knew in my head that we needed to fix, which was getting you on a budget. But it's hard to see when you're in it. Totally 100% understand that. But fortunately, your aunt actually gifted you my program, which I thought was amazing. What was that conversation like with her? And what were you feeling? You can be totally honest here. What were you feeling before we like officially began the money coaching program?
My aunt is really kind of like a mother to me. And we had talked a lot about you once I started understanding what you did. And there was really like two sides in my head. The first side was like, this is amazing. Someone does this, and it's someone who I know is smart, and it's someone who I know is very driven, and they would never leave their full time job to take this leap unless they knew they were good at it. And then the other half of me that was like, oh, I can't afford it. I don't know. I'll never be able to do it. So she is very good with finances. She is incredibly organized. She has that personality. So, as I probably said to her, like the 10th time, she probably was really just trying to be like, all right, will you do it already? Like, stop it. And I think she could tell that I was stuck a little bit and conflicted. I wanted to, but I couldn't. And so I think that was her way of sort of unsticking me. She's a very generous person, and she has always been very supportive of me. Like she knew I could do it and she believed in me. So I think she felt comfortable spending that money on me because she felt very strongly that it would be worth it and that I could do it.
Oh, I'm so glad she did. I'm so glad because it was totally worth it. I'm saying it was worth it for you, but I know you know that too. So I'm really glad. Now, were you nervous or like what were you feeling before we officially got started?
Part of me was very relieved because I felt like there's hope for me. And I think that the part of me that didn't ask for help was really a combination of things. And I feel like there's probably a lot of people in this place, which is you feel like, my God, I'm not supposed to need help with this. I work for a bank. I have a college degree. I am a smart person. Why can't I do this? And you feel this kind of mix between shame and just surprise. And I feel like you start having this almost self loathing of, you have these internal conversations. How am I this stupid? Like, how am I a smart person that's this stupid? So once I got to a place where I accepted a mind flip where it was, wait a minute, this is the same thing as asking for help from a gardener, a painter, a mechanic, and anything where I am not the expert, it's no different. So once that flip happened, and again, once you and I started having our conversations and I started believing you, because immediately you were like, yeah, we're going to do this. And I was like, are you sure? You were like, yeah, do this. I think that once we got on that road is when I really started feeling like, oh, all right, we are going to do this. And those things that I really dreaded the most, newsflash, I didn't have to know how to make a budget, and I still don't because it does. So that like took so much pressure off where I realized Raya's not going to make me go off on my own and make a budget and turn it into her. That's not how this is going to work.
Right.
So, oh my gosh, even thinking about how that happened even makes me feel so relieved right now because you still do that for me and I still don't want to, right? I feel like no interest in making my own budget, but that's what you're here for. So let people do what they're good at and then I don't have to do it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so powerful, Rachel. And I hear it from so many people like, I work in finance or I handle other people's money or I do this, I do that, but I can't figure it out for myself. And I think once people have that realization that, hey, I don't have to be an expert in this. It's not something that I learned or was taught. So let me go seek out the help I need. People can actually get over that self loathing, like you said, and actually work to turn things around.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you start thinking, oh, wait a minute. It's not weak to need this help. It's actually smart.
Yes.
So that mind flip actually is really important to, I feel like, being successful, where you start thinking differently about yourself. Because as long as you're stuck in that cycle of, I'm the worst, I'm weak, I'm stupid, I can't do this, what is wrong with me? I don't think you do get anywhere because none of that is motivating at all.
Right.
So once I started thinking, like, oh, this was my smart decision and I should have done it a long time ago, that's an extra motivator to be like, oh, okay, I'm being smart now. It helps really get you rolling down the path that you need to be on, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm curious because it's been a little over 3 years. What has surprised you the most about your money and budget since we started working together? And then, do you have any words of wisdom for someone who's listening to this who maybe had the exact same thought process you did and is considering signing up?
When we first started, it was all about the debt, right? And that was really our focus at the time. And I think our payoff plan was maybe like 5 or 6 years. It could have
Yeah.
even been. And that was really like the mindset like, okay, we're going to get you out of credit card debt. What surprised me was less than 2 years in, that was done. And we really then got into the true power of what you do and what your program can do and what even getting out of debt can do. Because then it wasn't, oh, okay, how are we going to pay off this debt, then it was like, what's next? And instead of thinking to myself, okay, how am I going to use my paycheck to pay off debt? It was, ooh, what am I going to do with my paycheck?
Yes.
And that mindset is so different. And when I tell people, and I will tell whoever is listening to this, that it changes your life, like that's one of the huge life changing things. It's not the money. Money doesn't buy everything, money doesn't give you everything, but it's that mindset and it's that freedom and it's my work stands for something and I'm getting something out of this. And that is so life changing. And I really wasn't expecting that. I didn't know it was going to change my life. I thought it was going to help me financially and I would get out of debt. And that would have been awesome. That would have been amazing. And it would have been an achievement. But where it actually took me and how much my life has changed, that was very shocking. And I feel like if there's anybody who is feeling like, man, I'm never going to get out of this mountain of debt, I'm going to work until I'm dead, I'm never going to retire. Let me just say that I know there's different things for different people, right? I got very lucky and got some really good bonuses. And you and I worked through how we were going to use those bonuses for me rather than when I was younger, I would take off to Vegas and blow it all weekend. I know not everybody has that. And I know not everybody's going to be able to pay off their debt in 2 years. And I got very lucky that way. But to think yourself out of a hole and to understand just how much your life can change, not because of the money, but what comes from having control over your money and having the freedom to use your money that you earned. That is worth it. And I'm very lucky that my aunt gifted me this, but I would hope I would have done it anyway, and it would have been worth every single red cent because of where it can get somebody. It's a big deal.
I think one of my proudest moments with you specifically was I can't remember verbatim what we were talking about, but I know it was something along the lines of, holy cow, like I can manifest, or like there is power in the universe, or like, holy cow, like things are actually working out the way you said they would. And I think before that point, or maybe when we first started, there was not necessarily a chip on your shoulder, but maybe you didn't believe in manifesting, or maybe you didn't believe in the power of mindset shifts and what it can do for you. But when that switch happened and we had that conversation, I just felt so proud of you and so accomplished as a coach because it is true. And I've seen it with so many clients. And I love converting non believers to believers.
So I am very data driven. I am a researcher. I am an internet wormholer. I look things up and research things and all this stuff, right? So when you told me, listen, when you start taking care of your money, money will come to you. And I was like, yeah, okay, sure. That's just my data driven personality. Listen, you were beyond right. And whatever you want to call it, right? Whether it's some kind of karma, whether it's manifesting, whether it's visualizations, whether it's the universe giving to you what you give to it, you can call it a lot of things, but it's not exactly explainable. There's a little bit of magic there somehow,
Yeah.
some way. I don't know. I cannot explain it, but exactly what you said was going to happen did happen. And I'm sure it's a combination of a lot of things, but it happened and more.
Yeah, I'm not the magician, right? Like it's you doing what you're supposed to do with your money and it working out the way it needs to. So I am just the person who's experienced that for myself and seen it in so many other people. So I relay it to the people who do decide to work with me so that they know, hey, do what you're supposed to do and the right things are going to happen as a result.
Yeah, and it sure did.
Are you loving this episode so far? Well, the money and life level up conversations never end in the City Girl Savings community. Visit citygirlsavings.com for instant access to resources that help you budget, level up your money mindset, and so much more. And make sure you stay up to date with CGS by following us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, all at City Girl Savings. So, I actually want to transition a little bit to your salary and talking about that because I feel like that in and of itself is also a huge accomplishment. Just how you were able to go from maybe a starting salary of 30,000 to multiple six figures and bonuses and everything throughout the course of your career. So, do you have a strategy that you've leveraged that has helped you increase your salary as much as possible? Or do you have any tips or guidance for people who are listening who maybe struggle with negotiating or just increasing their salaries overall?
Yeah, especially women. I think a lot of women suffer from imposter syndrome, and I'm no exception. And for a long time, I felt like, hey, I didn't grow up with a lot. I should just be really grateful for whatever it is I'm getting. And now I got this other role in this salary offered to me. I should just be really thankful and grateful. And I did operate that way for a long time. And I would say it wasn't until maybe 6 or 7 years ago, actually, that I started getting really serious about learning how to negotiate. And that really was sparked by a friend and mentor who also had been my boss. I was going from one big financial institution to another one. And I was just talking to him about like if they make the offer and I'm interviewing and things like that. And he said, don't take the first offer. And I was like, well, I will be really happy if I get this job and stuff like that. And he was like, no. He's like, you're very qualified. You're a great worker. You deserve this role. So, no, you will not take the first offer. And he gave me some really good pointers that I think are very simple, right? The first one is when they make the offer to you, you say, oh, thank you so much. I'd love to think about it overnight. And can I give you a call back tomorrow? And no recruiter is going to be like, oh, you don't want the role? Fine, forget it. Like, that's not going to happen. They're not offering you the role in that way, right?
Right.
And I knew this from being a hiring manager. I've hired hundreds of people. I know that recruiters are expecting that. And I know managers aren't upset by it. But again, it was the same idea as like what I struggled with in my financial life. It's like it's harder to put it into practice with yourself. But when he gave me kind of the words to use, then that helped. So sure enough, I called them back the next day and I asked for more salary and I asked for signing bonus.
Wow.
And I got both. I didn't get them in exactly the amounts that I asked for, but that's the name of that game, right? So they offer 10, you ask for 15, they come back with 12 and a half. Great. So that was the first time I did that. And it was so easy. And I do get a lot of questions about this from people from all types of directions have asked me about this. And when I tell them, yeah, just do this and say this, like it's not that hard, people are kind of shocked. Now, I'm not going to say make up numbers, right? You do have to do a little bit of work first. So you are going to want to research the market pay of the position that you're looking at. You want to understand your experience and background compared to the role that's being offered to you. So you can't be like, oh, they're offering 110. I'm going to ask for 210. You can't do that.
Yeah.
And you also can't word it in such a way that is not going to be in your interest, right? So another thing that I've helped people with is to say, you can't say to the recruiter, I'm only taking this job if you give me 200.
Mm.
Like that's not the way to get it. And you also have to know when to ask for it. So don't ask for anything before you're offered. You don't go into the interview going, yep, give me a great interview. But by the way, you better give me this amount of money. Like that's not when to do it either. Right. So if you time it right, if you do the right research, if you ask in the right way, if you have the right weapons in your tool belt, tools in your tool belt, that's going to help you. There are lots of different scenarios here, honestly. So
Yeah.
like the most recent role I got, I was actually getting a lateral move. So technically, the level of my role was the same, and I wasn't supposed to get an increase. But then I said, hey, would you mind doing a peer review and just see what my peers in this new organization are making and see if that would lead us to any kind of salary adjustment? And it did. And a good one. So just kind of think about what you're asking, what situation you're in and how you want to ask for these things. I wish I would have negotiated sooner. But once I learned, then it really just becomes a habit. It just becomes like, oh, you never take the first offer. Come on. And I feel like it's pretty easy after that. And then when it comes to salary, that's only one of the things you might be able to negotiate. So just think about all the other things you might be able to negotiate. Maybe it's a signing bonus. Maybe it's the amount of PTO that you will have. Maybe it's being able to work remote. So just kind of like think about what things that you're looking for and what kind of things you might get.
First off, I think all of that is extremely helpful. And you said something that was so powerful. So, anyone who's listening to this, like getting that lateral shift and asking the hiring manager, asking your future manager to do a peer review, that's genius. That's so smart because a lot of times people are growing in their careers and their salaries in different ways. And so if you're transitioning to a group of individuals who just naturally made more because of the course of their career, that could easily be a way for you to make more without having to maybe go through all the hoops that a new job would have. So I think that's really helpful. Especially if people don't want to job hop. I want to talk to you about job hopping because that's been a tip on TikTok for a lot of people to really get bumps in salary. You got to shift employers, right? You got to switch jobs. And I think the peer review tip is proof that maybe you don't have to do that. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on like job hopping to make more money.
This is rough, right? Especially when it comes to generations, because I'm Gen X. And that generation and the ones before it are generally not job hoppers. So we're generally trying to find a home and have longevity and have something we can count on. We don't want to have something we can't count on. So we want to have that. Whereas younger people, job hopping is just the way that they're going to do it. And a year is fine for them. And so I think it really does have to do with what you are comfortable with. But I will say this, you don't go into any job being an expert. No matter how much experience you have, no matter how much background you have, no matter how much schooling you have, usually it takes a year to get comfortable in a role. So I would just say be careful not to become a caricature of what you want to be because you're chasing, oh, I got to hop around to get a salary. Now, I do agree that the major salary increases in any career are going to come from a new role, whether it's in the same company or out of the same company. You are not, in general, going to be in the same role with the same team doing the same thing and all of a sudden just get a bunch of in-role raises, anything above cost of living. And it doesn't even keep up with inflation in general. 3, 4% is industry standard in most industries. That does not even give you a raise almost.
Yeah.
So, not going to be where it's at. And people generally are not handing anything to anyone, right? You do have to have some ability to see what's next for you. So, if you value making a better salary, then I wouldn't call it job hopping. I would say finding the next opportunity and continuing to learn and grow and take advantage of opportunities. Job hopping in itself, I think, is exactly what it sounds like. It's just
Mhm.
job hopping. If you get money from it, then okay, good for you. But again, aging myself continually in this discussion. But if you simply job hop, I can't see a ton of long term benefit. So it's not something that I would start to recommend, but I certainly would recommend understanding where your major salary increases come from. And it is true that is going to be from new roles. Doesn't need to be a different company, but it's certainly going to be a new role.
Yeah, I'm glad you shared your opinion on that, especially as someone who's been through it and understands. So, very helpful. So, earlier on, I mentioned that you have a child, you have a daughter. You mentioned that you didn't really have money conversations with your dad growing up. So, I'm curious, have you started talking to your daughter about money? Do you plan to? And what, if anything, would you do differently from your upbringing in terms of financial conversations and the upbringing your daughter is having?
Yeah. So my daughter is 8. And we have certainly started talking about it and doing certain things. She gets money in a few different ways. Like it could be a birthday gift or something like that. Or sometimes we will pay her for doing different chores. Or it could be that she achieved something and we do something like taking her to Target. And usually what she achieved is good behavior at school because we struggle. So we definitely have a piggy bank. Any cash she gets, she puts it in her piggy bank and she either saves it or sometimes she spends it. When I take her to Target for a reward, I give her a budget and I use the word budget and I do make her stick to the budget. I will let her add to it. So if I say, okay, you can pick something that's $20, it can either be one $20 thing or two $10 things, whatever that looks like. She's very good at math, so that's no problem. If she says, oh, but I want this one that's 35, then she knows that she can put her own money towards it. So that's
Right.
one option she has, and she'll do that. Or this is a little sassy, my kid. So sometimes she'll say, I really want this one. When we get home, can I do this to earn it? And sometimes I'll say yes. So if I say your budget is 20 and this one's 25, and I know that we have 10 stacks of laundry waiting to be put away, then sometimes I'll let that happen. So we certainly have budget conversations. We certainly have money conversations. She did tell me the other day, she said, I'm never going to get married. And I said, why? And she said, I don't want to share my money.
Oh,
Which I thought was hilarious. Yeah, so she definitely understands earning money, saving money. She is saving for, well, she thinks she's going to buy herself a cell phone. It's a different discussion. Those of you with kids around that age will know that they all want a cell phone. And I know everybody has different ideas, but I think 8 is too young for a cell phone. But then she's like, fine, you won't buy it for me? I'll buy it for myself.
oh,
Would I say sassy? She's, it's definitely a conversation. I don't want to have the kind of conversations that I had with my dad. So I remember asking, can I get a 49-cent Slurpee? And my dad said, we can't afford that. So I don't want her to have the answer to every request be, we don't have enough money. But I also don't want to give her the idea that money is never ending and you can just have it whenever you want it and spend it willy nilly. So I try to balance those things. I don't know that I'm doing the best job, but here's my plan. I'm sending her to you when the time is right. So you will supplement my whatever teachings I have done at that time. I don't actually know what the right age is for that. Maybe somewhere in the teens or something like that. But I think setting the foundation for understanding the concepts of saving, spending, earning, things like that, I think she's a good age for that. We just keep it super, super, super simple, which is $20 is your budget. You stick with $20.
yeah. I think that's phenomenal. And I think a lot of us people, adults, didn't have conversations like that, you, myself included. And so I think now that we know better, we can help our kids or, our nieces and nephews, the children in our life, start understanding that it's okay to have those conversations and it's okay to think about money in terms of this is what you have, this is what you don't have, and kind of make it a norm to say budget, right? Not cringe. How people hear the word budget and they cringe because they don't really understand the concept of it. So I love that you're bridging that gap now.
Yeah, trying.
You're doing. So you obviously make a lot of money. You work at high leadership levels. You're a wife, you're a mom, you got fur babies. Kudos to you. You do a lot, Rachel, and you do it very well. I'm curious, how do you manage it all? And do you have any tips for someone who is maybe struggling with managing all the roles that they have in their life?
I think that what I'm going to say here probably is not possibly what people are expecting. The first thing I would say is choose your partner or your spouse wisely.
Mm,
Because what I will say is I don't do it all because I don't have to. My husband has never been that person who expects me to shoulder more of the parenting load. I know that's very common. I know that it happens, but That's not the way we set up our relationship, our marriage, or our parenting approach. It's never 50-50. Sometimes it's 60-40. Sometimes it's 90. It depends, just like anything that has to do with marriage or any relationship, really. But we really share a lot of the parenting. So he does mornings, I do nights. We try to stick to very strong routines in certain ways. So I try not to, unless I'm traveling for work or I'm sick or something, I try not to miss our nighttime routine. So we read, we do our nighttime routine. I try to never miss that. I have certain rules for myself. Like, I'm not going to miss one of her softball games. I'm not going to miss one of her taekwondo belt tests, certain things like that, that I will make sure I'm there for. There are other things that are okay to miss. I'm not going to be able to go to every single midday school event. All the working parents out there will hear me loud and clear when I say schools have a lot of midday events. They have a lot of stuff that you maybe can't do. So just choose the ones that mean more to your kid. So if your kid really wants you to go to musical performance or something like that, then prioritize those. I would also say that you never have to do all the things at once or all the time. You might have to have chicken nuggets one night or grilled cheese one night or cereal one night. Sometimes you can have your 10 piles of laundry folded on the table that have not been put away that I can see out of the corner of my eye right now. So you just kind of have to figure out what the general priorities are and go from there. From a work standpoint, it's probably easier for me at this point to say, yeah, you don't have to be perfect at work all the time. At this point, I have a lot of confidence in my career, I have a lot of confidence in my abilities. I know what I'm good at, those types of things. From a parenting perspective, we always wish we were better. We always want to do it better than we did yesterday. We always are feeling like, oh man, whatever it is you did, right? Maybe you were short with your kid. Maybe you said, not right now, whatever it is. Those are the things that I think most working parents struggle with more, the parenting side. So some days you are going to give a little bit more to work. You have a project due, you have to travel, whatever it is. And then the next week, you try to give a little more to your kid. It's not necessary to be perfect all the time or do all the things all the time. And I'll go back to what I said at the beginning. Choose your spouse wisely. It is important to have what works for you. And what works for me is having an equal parent. I wasn't interested in that sort of traditional type of role. That wasn't what was for me. It could be for what's other people, but really think about those things, because if I didn't have that, I feel like I would be struggling for sure. It would be hard.
Did you and your husband have those conversations like early on, like maybe before you even got married? Like, were those questions that you asked or things that you said that you needed?
Yeah, we had some of the conversations and we talked about wanting kids. And for my husband, he wanted to be a dad, he wanted a kid. And I knew that he didn't want a kid just to have one, right? Like, he wanted to spend time with his kid, he wanted to be a father. So, me knowing those things, I sort of already knew that it wasn't going to be me trying to beg him to change a diaper or something like that. And then, from a standpoint of what kind of roles we would have in the marriage, I was older when we got married. So we were both already at an age where we were pretty independent, and we were, I don't know if mature is the right word, but at a point with what we expected out of a relationship was not what you expect in your 20s or when you're younger. So me knowing that he understood who I was, what my independence looked like, what I'm tolerant of and intolerant of, that was what I knew was going to set us up for that parenting same page, I guess I'll call it. Because I'm not like a sweet, soft,
Yes,
wifey
you
or anything.
are. Yes, you are.
I like my alone time. I like my independence. I like stuff like that. So that worked out for us. In fact, we only had one vow really, and that was don't boss me around. So you don't boss me, I'm not going to boss you, and we'll be fine. And that served us pretty well. So, but you do have to talk about it. some people really benefit from writing these things out and going to counseling and stuff like that. And I certainly think that there is a lot of benefit to that. We didn't do that. I didn't think we had to, but I think whatever it is that gets you to a place where you are confident in how this person's going to treat you and how they're going to partner with you and how they're going to work your life with you. Those are definitely important things to understand. However, you get there might be different, but for sure you should know, especially in the parenting part, because parenting is no joke. It's not easy.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice. And I just want to share a story for those listening. I remember when we were doing like our mentoring sessions at work, I was struggling with doing all the things with running my business and working full time and cleaning the house and having the dogs. And it was like a really stressful time. And I think I was complaining to you about cleaning or something, but you were the one who put the seed in my head that said, get a house cleaner. And I did. And it totally changed everything. And I just wanted to share
Mhm.
that because it was a game changer.
It is a game changer. And it was really a guy that I worked with who had been married like 25 years. And somebody else asked him, "Oh, what's your secret?" And he was like, "You want to know my secret?" And everyone was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Get a housekeeper."
Totally.
And it's true because so many fights are about who cleaned what and who didn't clean what and who's going to clean what.
Right.
No, stop with all that.
Yes, just hands down best advice. Well, we are coming to our end here, but I want to end with this kind of final question. Over the past 3 years, we've paid off so much of your credit card debt and we've gotten to, well, all of your credit card debt, a car. We've done a lot in terms of paying off most of your debt. And now we're at this place in your finances, Rachel, where we're transitioning to saving more and investing more and thinking about your future life and retirement and making sure that you all are set up for success. So I'm curious, what are some of your future financial goals?
Yeah, I would like my husband to be able to retire. He has an incredibly physically taxing job. And I would love to get us to a place where he can retire. I want to be at a place where we could take a nice vacation every year. And I think we're pretty much there. And then I want to figure out what the next investment vehicle should be. I don't know if it's real estate. I don't know, what that exactly is going to look like, but I definitely want to figure that out because now that I have a taste of income that I didn't have to do anything for, I like it, right?
Yes, yes.
Salary is great, but when I am making money from spending money and getting money in other ways, that's amazing. That's something that I never even thought of. I never even conceived of. And I like it.
Yeah.
So we're going to keep going with respect to that. And then retirement, right? I think I'm probably not exactly on the path I need to be on with retirement. So I need to keep increasing that a little bit.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I am so excited for what's in store for you. You've come a long way and you still have so much more to go. And it's going to be an exciting continuation of the journey. So, before I let you go, you're in the Facebook group. Should anyone who's listening have any questions for you, would you mind if they reached out?
Oh, no, not at all. If I can help, I'm happy to help.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, Rachel, and just sharing your thoughts, your journey, career, income, family. Super helpful, super inspiring. And I appreciate you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody listening, do it. Do it. If I can do it, you can do it.
Yes. Take the risk. Take the risk. It's worth it.
Absolutely is worth it. It's amazing. And thank you.
Thank you so much for letting me be the money coach in your ear today. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the City Girl Savings Podcast and you feel empowered and motivated to take the next step in the journey to your dream life. Remember, if someone like me, a millennial who loves to travel, new experiences, and iced coffees can live a life they love on a budget, you can too.